The air on Celsior 3 was thick with the scent of damp moss and metallic minerals, a combination that clung to every breath. The field mission was meant to be routine, observe, document, and report back. That was the plan. But plans never survived first contact with reality. Weylin Oakes adjusted the strap of his medical field kit as he stepped over a tangle of bioluminescent vines. The alien students accompanying them had been skeptical from the start. The Xelari were a species of tall, sinewy beings with translucent skin that pulsed faintly with their internal biochemistry. 3 of them had been assigned to shadow the human medical team as part of their interspecies studies. Observing human resilience, or what they assumed was a lack thereof, was on their academic agenda. "Your physiology is fragile," Verith noted, his elongated fingers tapping against the data tablet he carried. "Bones prone to breaking, organ redundancy is minimal. It is astonishing you persist as a dominant species." "Well, we manage," Weylin said, stepping over a slick patch of alien moss. "You'll see soon enough how we handle things when they go wrong." The Xelari had no real equivalent to human emergency medicine. Their biology was vastly different, allowing them to regenerate tissue at an accelerated rate. To them, the idea of surgery, of cutting into a body to fix damage, was barbaric. Weylin had already overheard a hushed conversation among the students about their belief that humans were more suited to archival study than practical survival exercises. That belief was about to be tested. A sudden, sharp crack split the air, followed by a guttural scream. Weylin's head snapped up. One of the human team members, Mateo, had been scouting ahead when the ground beneath him gave way. The terrain on Celsior 3 was unpredictable, riddled with unstable sinkholes that led to cavernous drops. Weylin sprinted forward, ignoring the startled exclamations of the Xelari. Mateo lay sprawled at the bottom of the sinkhole, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Blood seeped through his uniform. His breathing was fast, too fast. Weylin didn't need a scanner to know he was going into shock. "Stay with me, Mateo," Weylin said, dropping to his knees beside him. He pulled a pair of gloves from his kit and snapped them on. "Tell me where it hurts the most." Mateo's face was pale. "Leg. Feels wrong." Weylin ran his hands over the limb, careful not to jostle the injury. The Xelari hovered at the edge of the sinkhole, their bioluminescence flickering in what Weylin had come to recognize as distress. "You're patching him?" Verith's voice was laced with uncertainty. "Would it not be more efficient to let him expire and replace him?" Weylin shot him a sharp look. "That's not how we do things." He pulled out the scanner and ran it over Mateo's leg. The display confirmed what he already suspected, a compound fracture. Bone fragments had shifted dangerously close to a major artery. Moving him without stabilizing the leg could be catastrophic. "We need to do this now," Weylin muttered. He grabbed a field splint from his kit and glanced at the Xelari. "You wanted to see how fragile we are? Watch closely." The next few minutes were a blur of action. Weylin worked with precision, cutting away the fabric of Mateo's uniform to expose the wound. Blood loss was a concern, but he had coagulants on hand. He administered a local anesthetic, limited supply, but enough to dull the worst of the pain. "You are cutting flesh," one of the students, Lyrith, looked visibly unsettled. "This is unnecessary brutality." "This is survival," Weylin corrected. "Without intervention, he'll bleed out or suffer permanent nerve damage." He set the fractured bone with a swift, practiced motion. Mateo groaned but remained conscious. Weylin worked quickly to secure the splint, his hands steady despite the weight of the task. The Xelari watched in stunned silence. When it was done, Weylin sat back on his heels, breathing hard. "We need to get him back to the ship for surgery." Verith's luminescence had dimmed considerably. "You repaired him without natural regeneration." "That's how humans do it," Weylin wiped sweat from his brow. "We don't regrow limbs, but we fix what we can, and we don't leave our own behind." The Xelari exchanged glances, their disbelief palpable. They had come expecting to study the fragility of human life. Instead, they had witnessed something else entirely. Something they did not understand. The return to the ship was a logistical nightmare. The ground remained treacherous, the thick undergrowth making every step a potential hazard. Weylin led the effort, helping to carry Mateo alongside the rest of the human team. The Xelari students didn't assist beyond observing, their expressions unreadable as they trailed behind. Inside the medical bay, fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow over the equipment. Weylin moved swiftly, stripping off his gloves and replacing them with a fresh pair before prepping for surgery. Mateo was conscious but fading, his breathing shallow. The pain medication had dulled the worst of it, but shock still threatened to take hold. "This is going to take more than field treatment," Weylin muttered, grabbing the necessary tools. He signaled to one of the other medics, who immediately began prepping the surgical instruments. The Xelari remained clustered at the far end of the room, their translucent skin pulsing in slow, rhythmic shifts. Their species had never needed surgery, never had to deal with internal injuries in this way. Weylin had no time to explain anything to them, nor did he particularly care to. Mateo's leg was the priority. A deep scan confirmed internal bleeding, the fractured bone having torn into nearby muscle. Weylin adjusted the sterile drape over Mateo's lower body before making the first incision. The Xelari flinched in unison, their glow flickering erratically. "You are severing his flesh deliberately," Veyrith observed, his tone somewhere between horror and fascination. "To fix what's broken," Weylin said, not looking up. His hands remained steady as he worked, carefully exposing the damaged tissue. Leaving it like this would kill him. Blood welled around the wound, and Weylin immediately suctioned it away. He worked methodically, clamping the torn vessels before they could cause further hemorrhaging. A cauterization tool hissed as it sealed the smaller bleeds, the scent of burned tissue filling the air. Lirith's glow dimmed significantly. "This is unnecessary suffering." Weylin didn't bother arguing. He focused on repositioning the fractured bone. The jagged edges needed to be set before he could secure them properly. He reached for the bone stabilizer, aligning the pieces manually before affixing the external fixator. Mateo groaned, his body twitching slightly despite the anesthesia. Weylin adjusted the sedation levels, ensuring he remained stable. "You endure this willingly?" one of the other Xelari students asked. "Not willingly," Weylin said, tightening the final stabilizer. "But when the alternative is death, we do what we have to." He closed the wound with careful sutures, layering the tissue to minimize scarring. Once the final stitch was in place, he stepped back, exhaling slowly. The worst was over. Mateo would need time to heal, but he would survive. The Xelari had not moved. Their bioluminescence was erratic, shifting between brightness and near darkness. "You are incapable of regeneration," Veyrith said, "yet you modify your bodies to compensate." "We adapt," Weylin corrected, peeling off his gloves, "and we don't just let people die because it's inconvenient to fix them." Lirith looked at Mateo's leg, now stabilized and covered with a protective wrap. "What if the bone does not mend?" "Then we fix it again," Weylin said simply, "or replace it if we have to." The Xelari exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. They had expected fragility. Instead, they had witnessed something else entirely, something they could not comprehend. Several hours had passed since the surgery, and Mateo was stable. Weylin had checked his vitals twice, ensuring there were no signs of internal complications. The external fixator held the fractured bone in place, and the wound itself had been cleaned and dressed. For now, all they could do was monitor his condition and wait for the natural healing process to take over. The Xelari remained in the medical bay, their luminescence flickering unpredictably. They had refused to leave, despite having no role in Mateo's care. They observed everything, their translucent skin pulsing in irregular waves. Weylin pulled off his gloves and disposed of them before turning to face the students. "You've been standing there for hours. What exactly are you hoping to see?" Veyrith's glow remained dim. "We are attempting to comprehend why you inflict trauma upon the body in order to restore it." "You think we're making things worse?" Weylin asked. Lirith's fingers twitched, a nervous tic Weylin had learned to recognize. "We think it is an inefficient method of preservation. Our species does not require such interventions. Our bodies repair themselves without the need for incisions, clamps, or external stabilizers. Weylin leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. That's the difference, then. You don't need medical intervention, so you assume we shouldn't either. But that's not how human biology works. If we left Mateo alone, his leg would heal incorrectly, if it healed at all. He'd be unable to walk properly, develop infections, maybe even lose the limb entirely. This was the only way to ensure he recovers. Veyrith's glow pulsed faintly. If his body is incapable of repairing itself without such extreme measures, how do you survive injuries that are even greater? We develop better techniques, Weylin said. We create new treatments, design new technologies, invent ways to extend life where nature would have taken it away. We don't just accept what happens to us. We fight against it. The Xelari exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. A groan from the medical bed pulled Weylin's attention back to Mateo. His eyelids fluttered, his breathing deepening as the effects of the sedation began to wear off. Weylin moved to his side, checking the monitors. His vitals remained steady, though discomfort was inevitable as sensation returned. Mateo's voice was hoarse. "Am I dead?" Weylin snorted, adjusting the IV drip. "Not yet, but if you keep talking, I might reconsider." Mateo exhaled sharply, his lips twitching in amusement despite the pain. "Leg feels like it got stomped on by a cargo hauler." "That's because it basically did," Weylin said. "Broke clean through. We stabilized it, but you're going to be off your feet for a while." Mateo shifted slightly, wincing. "You did the full surgical routine?" "Had to. Bone was too unstable otherwise." Mateo let out a slow breath. "Glad it was you handling it then." Weylin checked the bandages, ensuring there was no new bleeding. "You'll need at least a few weeks before any real movement, physical therapy after that." Veyrith stepped closer to the bed. "And this process will fully restore function?" Weylin narrowed his eyes. "That's the goal. It takes time, but yeah, he'll walk again." Lyrith's glow flickered. "Your methods seem excessive." Mateo turned his head slightly, his expression weary but amused. "Excessive? You'd rather I just lay here and hope for the best?" Veyrith hesitated. "We do not understand how you endure such damage with no guarantee of restoration." Weylin gestured toward Mateo. "He's not just enduring it, he's recovering. That's the difference." Mateo gave a tired grin. "Besides, this isn't even the worst injury I've had." The Xelari students tensed, their luminescence dimming further. Lyrith's voice was quiet. "You have experienced worse?" Mateo laughed weakly. "Oh yeah, plenty of times. Had a lung collapse once, that was fun." Veyrith's glow pulsed erratically. "How did you survive that?" "Medical intervention," Weylin said, his tone dry. "Same as now." The Xelari were silent for a long moment, their shifting colors subdued. Finally, Veyrith spoke. "Your species does not simply heal. You reconstruct yourselves." "That's one way to put it," Weylin said. "We don't just let things happen to us. We fight back, against injuries, diseases, even time itself. That's how we survive." Lyrith's fingers twitched again. "This is not how we perceived human existence." Mateo chuckled, though it was more of a breath than a sound. "Yeah, well, humans have a habit of surprising people." The Xelari didn't respond immediately. Their bioluminescence remained dim, their expressions unreadable. Weylin could see the weight of realization settling on them. They had come expecting weakness, expecting fragility. Instead, they had witnessed something else entirely. Something they had not understood until now. 12 hours after the surgery, Mateo was stable but confined to the medical bay. Weylin had checked his vitals again, double-checked the external fixator, and updated the rest of the field team on his condition. There were no signs of infection or internal complications, which meant the worst was behind them. Now it was just a matter of pain management and ensuring proper healing. The Xelari remained, though their initial shock had settled into something else, analyzing, measuring, trying to reconcile what they had seen with what they had believed. Weylin was reviewing Mateo's latest scans when Veyrith stepped closer, his luminescence still dim. Your intervention has restored his stability, but the damage persists. Weylin didn't look up from the monitor. Bones don't knit back together instantly, it takes time. Lirith's fingers twitched, a habit Weylin had noticed when they were deep in thought. How long? 6 to 8 weeks for the fracture to fully mend, assuming no complications. Full mobility will take longer. Lirith's glow pulsed faintly. That is an extraordinary delay. Weylin finally turned to face them. For us, it's normal. That's why medical intervention is so important. Without stabilizing the fracture, he'd be dealing with lifelong complications. Mateo, still groggy from pain medication, exhaled through his teeth. Would have been worse if the bone had punctured an artery. Lirith's glow flickered erratically. And were that the case? Then we'd have had to clamp the vessel, control the bleeding, maybe even perform a transfusion. Weylin gestured toward the supply cabinet. We carry synthetic plasma and whole blood for emergencies. Veyrith's expression remained unreadable. You replace lost blood? If needed. The human body can regenerate it, but not quickly enough in extreme cases. Lirith's gaze drifted to Mateo's leg, her luminescence dimming further. Your survival is a process of constant intervention. Weylin crossed his arms. It has to be. We don't regenerate like you do. If something breaks, we fix it. If something fails, we replace it. That's how we survive injuries that would otherwise be fatal. Mateo shifted slightly, adjusting his position with a wince. And sometimes we push through injuries when we shouldn't. Lirith's glow pulsed in short, uneven bursts. Deliberately? Weylin sighed. Happens more often than it should. Humans have a bad habit of ignoring pain until something forces them to stop. Veyrith's luminescence remained low. Pain exists as a warning mechanism. Why disregard it? Mateo gave a tired chuckle. Because sometimes stopping isn't an option. The medical bay fell silent for a moment, the steady hum of the equipment filling the space. Lirith finally broke the quiet. You endure damage, repair it manually, and persist through pain. This is not logical. Weylin exhaled. Maybe not, but it's how we survive. The Xelari exchanged glances, their translucent skin shifting in faint pulses. They had come expecting to observe a fragile species, one that would crumble under the weight of biological limitations. Instead, they were confronted with something they couldn't quantify: resilience, built not on regeneration, but on sheer determination. Weylin turned back to the monitor, checking Mateo's latest stats. He'll need physical therapy once the bone fully heals, strength training, mobility exercises. If we don't work the muscles properly, they'll weaken. Veyrith's glow brightened slightly. You must retrain the body after injury? If we want full function, yeah. Lirith's fingers twitched again. And if the body does not respond? Then we adapt. Braces, prosthetics, neural interfaces, whatever it takes. The Xelari were silent again, their expressions unreadable. Weylin could see the weight of realization settling on them. They had expected vulnerability. Instead, they had witnessed something else entirely, something they did not understand. 2 days had passed since the surgery, and Mateo was recovering well. His vitals remained stable, his pain was managed, and there were no signs of infection. Weylin had kept a close watch, adjusting his treatment as needed. The external fixator remained in place, holding the fractured bone in alignment while the healing process continued. The Xelari students had not left. They lingered in the medical bay, observing every step of the recovery process with the same intensity they had shown during the initial procedure. They asked questions, studied the monitors, and recorded data on their tablets. Their fascination had not waned, but neither had their skepticism. That skepticism was about to be tested again. A sudden alarm blared from the biostabilization monitor. Weylin snapped his attention to the screen. Mateo's heart rate had spiked, his oxygen saturation dropping, his body tensed, his breathing shallow and rapid. Weylin was already moving. He pulled the blanket off Mateo's lower body, pressing his hands against the injured leg. The swelling had increased, a developing compartment syndrome. Pressure was building within the muscle tissue, restricting blood flow. If it wasn't relieved quickly, the limb could be permanently damaged. He grabbed a scalpel from the tray, his hands steady as he cut through the bandages and exposed the swollen tissue. The Xelari flinched as blood seeped through the incision, but Weylin didn't hesitate. He needed to release the pressure before circulation was completely compromised. Mateo groaned, barely conscious but clearly in pain. Weylin adjusted the anesthesia levels, ensuring he wouldn't feel the worst of it. The tissue beneath the skin was taut, straining against the unnatural buildup of pressure. Weylin made a precise incision along the muscle sheath, allowing the trapped fluid to escape. Blood and plasma pooled onto the sterile drape, but almost immediately Mateo's vitals began to stabilize. Weylin stepped closer, his luminescence flickering erratically. "You are deliberately exposing internal structures again." Weylin didn't take his eyes off his work. "If I didn't, the muscle would die. Blood flow was restricted. This was the only way to fix it." Lara's fingers twitched. "This is an additional injury. This is preventing a worse one." Weylin reached for the irrigation solution, flushing out the opened compartment to minimize the risk of infection. He placed a temporary wound vac over the site, ensuring proper drainage. Mateo's heartbeat steadied, his breathing deepening. The worst of the crisis had passed. Weyrth's glow pulsed unevenly. "Your interventions are continuous." Weylin removed his gloves, disposing of them before turning to face the Xelari. "Healing isn't always a straight line. Complications happen. When they do, we fix them." Lyrith's expression remained unreadable. "This degree of biological failure should be unsustainable." Mateo let out a slow breath, his voice weak but amused. "Yet here I am." The Xelari exchanged glances. They had seen the human body fail, but they had also seen it endure. Weylin adjusted the wound vac, securing the dressing in place. "He'll need additional monitoring, but the danger's past. The muscle will recover." Weyrth's luminescence remained dim. "You have, once again, prevented what should have been inevitable." Weylin exhaled. "That's the point." Lyrith's fingers twitched again. "Your survival is not based on strength or durability. It is based on relentless intervention." Mateo gave a tired grin. "And stubbornness." Weylin shook his head, but didn't argue. The Xelari were silent for a long time. When Weyrth finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before. "We have miscalculated." Lyrith nodded. "We assumed fragility equated to weakness. Instead, it has forced adaptation." Weylin didn't respond immediately. He simply checked Mateo's vitals one last time before stepping back. The Xelari had come expecting to witness the limits of human biology. Instead, they had seen something else entirely, something they had not understood before. Now they did.